Escape Pod. Episode 686. Flashback Friday. Real Artists. By Ken Liu.
Hi everyone, welcome to this month's Flashback Friday. This one comes to us from the always astonishing Ken Liu and first appeared in episode 377. This was a story Summer suggested we cover because it's recently been adapted into a short film with the same name. Real Artists is written and directed by Cameo Wood, and Summer recently interviewed them about it for Slice of Sci-Fi. We'll drop a link to both the interview and the movie for those of you with Prime access in the show notes. It's free to watch between now and June 24th, and they're pushing to be featured at the Prime Video All Voices Film Festival. I hope they made it. It's great work, and thanks to Summer for the suggestion too. This story was originally part of TRSF, a special publication of MIT's Technology Review. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And your narrator this week is Anne Leckie, who is not only a podcast alumni, but, like Ken, is one of the best writers working in any field at all on the planet right now. Her science fiction novels have picked up countless awards, and I cannot recommend them highly enough. Alternately, if fantasy is more your thing, The Raven Tower is a quietly wonderful book about faith, obligation, duty, and what happens when gods talk. I wrote about it a little while ago, and, again, link in the show notes. But now, get ready, because it's story time.
Real Artists by Ken Liu. You've done well, creative director Len Paladon said, looking over Sophia's resume. Sophia squinted in the golden California sunlight that fell on her through the huge windows of the conference room. She wanted to pinch herself to be sure she wasn't dreaming. She was here, really here, on the hallowed campus of Semaphore Pictures in an interview with the legendary Paladon. She licked her dry lips. I've always wanted to make movies, she choked back, for Semaphore. She didn't want to seem too desperate. Paladon was in his 30s, dressed in a pair of comfortable shorts and a plain gray t-shirt whose front was covered with the drawing of a man swinging a large hammer over a railroad spike. A pioneer in computer-assisted movie-making, he had been instrumental in writing the company's earliest software and was the director of The Mesozoic, Semaphore's first film. He nodded and went on. You won the Zoetrope screenwriting competition, earned excellent grades in both technology and liberal arts, and got great recommendations from your film studies professors. It couldn't have been easy. To Sophia, he seemed a bit pale and tired, as though he had been spending all his time indoors, not out in the golden California sun. She imagined that Paladon and his animators must have been working overtime to meet a deadline, probably to finish the new film scheduled to be released this summer. I believe in working hard, Sophia said. What she really wanted was to tell him that she knew what it meant to stay up all night in front of the editing workstation and wait for the rendering to complete, all for the chance to catch the first glimpse of a vision coming to life on the screen. She was ready. Paladon took off his reading glasses, smiled at Sophia, and took out a tablet from behind him. He touched its screen and slid it across the table to Sophia. A video was playing on it. There was also this fan film, which you didn't put on your resume. You made it out of footage cut and spliced from our movies, and it went viral. Several million views in 2 weeks, right? You gave our lawyers quite a headache. Sophia's heart sank. She had always suspected that this might become a problem. But when the invitation to interview at Semaphore came in her email, she had whooped and hollered and dared to believe that somehow the executives at Semaphore had missed that little film. Sophia remembered going to the Mesozoic. She was 7. The lights dimmed, her parents stopped talking, the first few bars of Semaphore's signature tune began to play, and she became still. Over the next 2 hours, as she sat there in the dark theater, mesmerized by the adventure of the digital characters on that screen, she fell in love. She didn't know it then, but she would never love a person as much as she loved the company that had made her cry and laugh, the company that made the Mesozoic. A semaphore movie meant something. No, not merely technological prowess in digital animation and computer graphics that were better than life. Sure, these accomplishments were impressive, but it was Semaphore's consistent ability to tell a great story, to make movies with heart, to entertain and move the 6-year-old along with the 16-year-old and the 60-year-old that truly made it an icon, a place worthy of being loved. Sophia saw each of Semaphore's films hundreds of times. She bought them multiple times in successive digital formats: discs, compressed downloads, lossless codecs, enhanced and re-enhanced and super enhanced. She knew each scene down to the second, could recite every line of dialogue from memory. She didn't even need the movies themselves anymore. She could play them in her head. She took film studies classes and began to make her own shorts, and she yearned to make them feel as great as the Semaphore classics. Advances in digital filmmaking equipment made it possible for her to achieve some spectacular effects on a small budget. But no matter how many times she rewrote her scripts, or how late she stayed in the editing labs, the results of her efforts were laughable, embarrassing, ridiculous. She could not bear to watch them herself, much less show them to others. "Don't be discouraged," a professor told her when he saw her slumped over in despair. "You got into this because you wanted to make something beautiful. But it takes time, lots of time, to be good at any creative work. The fact that you hate your own work right now so much just means that you have good taste. And great taste is the most valuable tool of a great artist. Keep at it. Someday you'll be as good as the best. Someday you'll make something beautiful enough even for you." She went back to the Semaphore films, picked them apart, and put them back together, trying to discover their secret. Now she was no longer viewing them as a mere fan, but as a reverse engineer. Gradually, because she did have great taste, she could not help but begin to see tiny flaws in them. The Semaphore films were not quite as perfect as she had thought. There were small things here and there that could be improved, and sometimes even big things. She went into seedy corners of the web to find out how to break the encryption codes on her digital rights-managed Semaphore movie files, imported them into the editing stations, and modified them to suit her new vision. And then she sat back in the darkness at her computer and watched her edited version of the Mesozoic again. She cried when she was done. It was better. She had made a great film even greater, closer to perfection. In some way, she felt as if the perfect Semaphore film had always been there, but hidden in places under the veil that was the released version. She had simply walked in and revealed the beauty underneath. How could she not share this vision with the world? She was in love with the beauty of Semaphore, and beauty wanted to be free. Sophia realized now that she had been engaging in denial. She had refused to think about how she had likely broken the law just by putting that edited version on the web. She had no good answer. "I love Semaphore's movies so much." Her voice trailed off. Paladin held up a hand and laughed. "Relax. I think it was brilliant. I told the recruiting department to fly you out not because of your application or resume, but because of your unauthorized re-edit." "You liked it?" Sophia could hardly believe her ears. Paladin nodded. "Tell me what you think was your best change." Sophia did not hesitate. This question she had thought about a lot. "Semaphore's films are wonderful, but they're fantastic if you're a boy. I changed the Mesozoic so that it was fantastic for girls, too." Paladin stared at Sophia, deep in thought. Sophia held her breath. "That makes sense," Paladin finally said. "Most of us working here are men. I've been saying for years that we need more women in the process. I was right about you. A real artist will do whatever it takes to make a great vision come true, even if she has to work with someone else's art." "All done?" Sophia nodded and handed the stack of signed legal documents back to Paladin. He explained that before he could give her an offer, he wanted to show her a bit of the Semaphore creative process, so she would know what she was getting into. She had to sign some pretty draconian NDAs to protect Semaphore's trade secrets. Sophia didn't hesitate for even 1 second. Getting a peek at how Semaphore made its magic was a lifelong dream. Paladin took her down a long series of hallways lined with closed doors. Sophia looked around, imagining what lay behind them. Bright, open workspaces where each employee was free to decorate her cubicle to express her creativity. Legendary conference rooms filled with colorful Lego blocks and Japanese toys to get the creative juices of the artists and engineers flowing. Server rooms filled with the proprietary computing hardware that made all the magic possible. Creative, talented artists reclining in beanbag chairs, tossing around the germ of an idea idea, each adding and polishing until it shone full and lustrous as a pearl? The doors remained closed. Finally, Paladin stopped in front of a door and unlocked it with a key. He and Sophia walked into the darkness beyond. They were in the projection booth overlooking a small theater. Sophia looked through the booth window and counted about 60 seats below, about half of which were filled. The audience was completely absorbed by the movie playing on the big screen in front. The humming from the projectors filled the booth. Is that... Sophia pressed her nose up against the window. Her heart pounded in her ears. She forgot to finish the question. Yes, Paladin said. That's an early version of our next film, The Mesozoic Again. It's a story about a boy meeting a dinosaur and learning timeless lessons about friendship and family. Sophia watched the bright figures on the screen, wishing she were down there among the rapt audience. So this is a test screening? No, this is how the film is made. I don't understand. Paladin walked over to a bank of displays on the other side of the projection booth and pulled out 2 chairs. Sit down. I'll explain. The monitors showed bundles of lines of different colors moving slowly across the screen, like the lines traced by heart monitors or seismographs. You know, of course, that a movie is an intricate emotion-generating machine. Sophia nodded. During the span of 2 hours, it must lead the audience by the nose on an emotional roller coaster. Moments of laughter are contrasted with occasions for pity, exhilarating highs followed by terrifying and precipitous drops. The emotional curve of a film is its most abstract representation, as well as the most primal. It's the only thing that lingers in the audience's mind after they leave the theater. Sophia nodded again. This was all just basic film theory. So how do you know that the audience is following the curve you want? I guess you do what every storyteller does, Sophia said, hesitant, feeling lost. You try to empathize with the audience. Paladin waited, his expression unchanged. And maybe you try to do test screenings and tweak things a bit at the end, Sophia added. Actually, she didn't believe in test screenings. She thought focus groups and audience reaction surveys were why the other studios produced such pap, but she didn't know what else to say. Aha, Paladin said, clapping his hands together. But how do you get the test audiences to give you useful feedback? If you survey them after, you'll only get very crude answers, and people lie, telling you what they think you want to hear. If you try to get people to give real-time feedback by pressing buttons as they watch the film, they become too self-conscious, and people aren't always good at understanding their own emotions. 60 cameras were suspended from the ceiling of the theater, each trained on a single seat below. As the film played, the cameras relayed their feeds to a bank of powerful computers where each feed was put through a series of pattern recognition algorithms. By detecting microscopic shifts in each face caused by the expansion and contraction of blood vessels below the skin, the computers monitored each audience member's blood pressure, pulse, and level of excitement. Other algorithms tracked the expressions on each face: smiling, smirking, crying, impatience, annoyance, disgust, anger, or just boredom and apathy. By measuring how much certain key points on a face moved, corners of the mouth, the eyes, ends of eyebrows, the software could make fine distinctions like that between a smile out of amusement and a smile due to affection. The data, collected in real time, could be plotted against each frame of the film, showing each audience member's emotional curve as they experienced the movie. So you can tune your movies a little better than other studios with test screenings. Is that your secret? Paladin shook his head. Big Semi is the greatest auteur in the history of filmmaking. It doesn't just tune. More than 7,000 processors were wired together into a computing grid in the basement of the Semaphore campus. This was where Big Semi, the semi was short for either semiotics or semantics, no one knew for sure anymore, lived. Big Semi was the algorithm, Semaphore's real secret. Every day, Big Semi generated kernels for high-concept movies by randomly picking out seemingly incongruous ideas out of a database. Cowboys and dinosaurs, World War II tactics in space, a submarine film transposed onto Mars, a romantic comedy starring a rabbit and a greyhound. In the hands of less skilled artists, these ideas would have gone nowhere. But Big Semi, based on Semaphore's record, had access to the emotional curves of proven hits in each genre. It could use these as templates. Taking the high-concept kernel, Big Semi generated a rough plot using more random elements taken from a database of classic films augmented with trending memes in the zeitgeist gathered from web search statistics. It then rendered a rough film based on that plot, using stock characters and stock dialogue, and screened the result for a test audience. The initial attempt was usually laughably bad. The audience response curves would be all over the place, but nowhere near the target. But that was no big deal for Big Semi. Nudging responses to fit a known curve was nothing more than an optimization problem, and computers were very good at those. Big Semi turned art into engineering. Say that the beat at 10 minutes in should be a moment of poignancy. If the hero saving a nest of baby dinosaurs didn't do it, then Big Semi would substitute in a scene of the hero saving a family of the furry proto-otters and see if the response curves on the next test screening moved any closer to the ideal. Or say that the joke that ended Act 1 needed to get the audience into a particular mood. If a variation on a line taken from a classic didn't do it, then Big Semi would try a pop culture reference, a physical gag, or even change the scene into an impromptu musical number. Some of these alternatives were things no human director would ever think of, but Big Semi had no preconceptions, no taboos. It would attempt all alternatives and pick the best one based on result alone. Big Semi sculpted actors, built sets, framed shots, invented props, refined dialogue, composed music, and devised special effects. All digitally, of course. It treated everything as levers to nudge the response curves. Gradually, the stock characters came to life, the stock dialogue gained wit and pathos, and a work of art emerged from random noise. On average, after 100,000 iterations of this process, Big Semi would have a film that elicited from the audience the desired emotional response curve. Big Semi did not work with scripts and storyboards. It did not give any thought to themes, symbols, homages, or any other words you might find in a film studies syllabus. It did not complain of having to work with digital actors and digital sets, because it knew of no other way. It simply evaluated each test screening to see where the response curve still deviated from the target, made big changes and small tweaks, and tested it again. Big Semi did not think. It had no pet political cause, no personal history, no narrative obsession or idée fixe that it wanted to push into its films. Indeed, Big Semi was the perfect auteur. Its only concern was to create an artifact as meticulously crafted as a Swiss watch that precisely pulled the audience along the exact emotional curve guaranteed to make them laugh and cry in the right places. After they left the theater, they would give the film great word of mouth, the only form of marketing that worked consistently, that always got through people's ad blockers. Big Semi made perfect films. So what would I do? Sophia asked. She felt her face flush and her heart beating fast. She wondered if any cameras were in the booth observing her. What do you do? It sounds like Big Semi is the only creative one around here. Why, you'll be a member of the test audience, of course, Paladin said. Isn't that obvious? We can't let the secret out, and Big Semi requires audiences to do its work. You just sit there all day and watch movies. You can do that with anybody off the street. No, we can't, Paladin said. We do need some non-artists in the audience to be sure we're not out of touch, but we need even more people with great taste. Some of us have much more knowledge about the history of film, finer senses of empathy, broader emotional ranges, more discerning eyes and ears for details, deeper capacities for feeling. Big Semi needs our feedback to avoid trite cliches and cheap laughs, mawkish sentiment and insincere catharsis. And as you've already discovered on your own, the composition of the audience determines how good a film Big Semi can make. I've been saying for years that we need more women in the process. It is only by trying out his skill against the finest palate that a chef can design the best dishes. Big Semi needs the best audience to make the best film the world has ever seen. And great taste is the most valuable tool of a great artist. Sophia sat numbly in the conference room, alone. Are you all right? A secretary passing by poked her head in. Yes, I just need a moment. Paladin had explained to her that there would be eye drops and facial massages to combat the physical fatigue. There would also be drugs to induce short-term memory loss so that everyone could forget the film they had just seen and sit through the next screening again, tabulae rase. The forgetting was necessary to ensure that Big Semi got accurate feedback. Paladin had gone on to say many other things, but Sophia didn't remember any of them. So this is what it's like to fall out of love. You have to let us know within 2 weeks, Paladin said as he walked Sophia down the long driveway to the campus gate. Sophia nodded. The drawing on the front of Paladin's t-shirt caught her attention. Who is that? John Henry, Paladin said. He was a laborer on the railroads in the 19th century. When the owners brought in steam-powered hammers to take jobs away from the driving crews, John challenged a steam hammer to race to see who could work faster. Did he win? Yes, but as soon as the race was over, he died of exhaustion. He was the last man to challenge the steam hammers because the machines got faster every year. Sophia stared at the drawing. Then she looked away. Keep at it. Someday you'll be as good as the best. She would never be as good as Big Semi, who got better every year. The golden California sun was so bright and warm, but Sophia shivered. She closed her eyes and remembered how she felt in that dark theater as a little girl. She was transported to another world. That was the point of great art. Watching a perfect movie was like living a whole other life. A real artist will do whatever it takes to make a great vision come true, Paladin said, even if it's just sitting still in a dark room.
Oh, this one is good. And not at all about what I first thought it was. You see, my first takeaway was honestly mild exasperation and a little disappointment. Wearing my film journalist hat, I often find myself watching that industry have one of its 3 all-time favourite conversations. Digital is killing film, everything is just superhero movies now, and blockbusters are mass-produced pablum designed to be hooked into the pre-IV'd veins of the masses. We're a wordy lot, what can I say? In order then, no it's not. It's making film more available to anyone who can't afford to drop thousands of dollars on getting stuff developed. No it isn't. You're just seeing a skewed angle on it because since 1920, and counting Zorro movies, there have been under 200 superhero films. It's just a lot of them have shown up recently. And, well, yes, blockbusters are mass-produced pablum, but so are cheeseburgers, and sometimes you just want a cheeseburger. Besides, art appreciation is not a slide rule. You find your emotional response, as John Green recently put it on 99% Invisible, where you find it. I cry like a newborn at the end of Apollo 13 every damn time. Seriously, that moment where Chris Kraft, played by Ed Harris, finally sits down for the first time, when he finally knows for sure the crew is safe, floods of tears, without fail. I have friends who cry the same way at the end of Toy Story. All of them. Those movies leave me cold. And yet, no one is wrong. We're all just differently right. And that's what I initially worried the story overlooked, which I really should have had more faith in, to be honest. So much time is spent, especially in this field, endlessly relitigating the past, facing backwards on the rocket and trying to recapture a time made beautiful only by the hormone-drenched beard losses of adolescence, that we forget things keep happening. Movies keep coming out, stories keep getting made, they keep changing, and you know what? A hell of a lot of them are actually really good. That doesn't invalidate the past either, and don't even get me started on the cretinous man-child entitlement of something destroying your childhood. Let me ask those people a question. Did the movie travel back in time and burn the print of the film you loved while you sobbed, then slowly, oh so slowly, smiled and walked off as you screamed eternal vengeance to the uncaring stars? No? Then sit entirely down. Your childhood is fine. So is the film. Let's move on. All of this flashed through my mind the first time I reread this, and then, much like the lead character reframes herself at the end, I found everything shifting. Because this isn't a sad paean to a lost age, but rather an ultimately triumphant story about what happens when you realise the world you've been taught to work towards isn't there anymore. Which, let's face it, is something that any writer, freelancer, or most creatives working in the year of our Lord 2019 can probably relate to. Yes, these are finely tuned, perfect pieces of mass consumer art built by an AI. Yes, this is Skynet reimagined as the ultimate auteur that absolutely will not stop until you are entertained, Sarah. But this is also the largest toy box any filmmaker has ever been handed. The chance to work inside a system that wants to be better, and by implication, the chance to work inside a system that is designed to learn. And if it can learn, it can be taught, which means you can leave a mark. You can write your name across modern culture like on some level we all do or want to do. This is tremendous, almost inconceivable power, and I don't view the ending as an abdication or a resignation at all. I view it as heroism. I view it as our lead shouldering the responsibility and working to get the job done with the tools at hand. Like any good filmmaker, any good creative, you work with what you've got. Sometimes it's the tool that fits your hand, and sometimes it's the tool you teach yourself to use. But there is always the blank page. There is always the blank screen. There is always the canvas. And there is always you, the artist. So go art. The audience are waiting and ready. Time to put on your show on your terms on the biggest stage on earth. Not imprisoned inside a faceless studio leviathan, but at the reins of it, and ready to steer it where you need it to go. Buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride. We're doing a thing at the moment. That's a technical business term thing. Capital T and everything. Specifically, we're doing it over at our Patreon, where what we have as our set goals right now are raising our pay rates to 8 cents a word and paying our associate editors. We're doing this for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's overdue, and secondly, there will shortly be an official SFWA recognised pay increase coming down the line, which again, it's a good thing. No creative on this earth is paid what they're worth, and if we can help pay folks a little bit more, so much the better. However, that payout, as I'm sure you realise, costs us. And for that to be affordable, we need some more people to donate. And for more people to donate, we need more people to pledge to the Patreon and gain access to, from as little as $5 a month, I will have you know, our unlimited, well, by unlimited I mean really big and getting added to a lot of the time, premium audio bucket, as well as the various other perks over there. But we're not just done there. See, like I say, we also want to pay our associate editors, who you may know better as slush readers, or slush wranglers, or slushes. These folks are vital to everyone. Every podcast that deals with stories you listen to, every magazine you read, every publisher has slush readers. These are the people who read everything. The brilliant, the okay, the good but needs work, the horrifying dross, all of it. They are the first point of contact between us and every single author, and they are essential, and they do an incredibly good job, as do so many slush readers industry-wide, and almost none of them are paid, and we want to change that. And again, for that, we need more money, and that's where some of you come in. Like I say, over at the Patreon, for as little as $5 a month, you gain access to our premium audio bucket. Over at PayPal, and the money does all go to the same place, it's just the thermometer is over at Patreon, as it were. You gain, again, access to the premium audio bucket at the $5 level. So if you can help, please do, because you're not just helping us, you're helping us raise the standard industry-wide, and that's something that's personally very important to me. I'm also painfully aware of the fact that not everyone can contribute financially, and you don't have to. And if you can't, then there is actually something else which we'd like to ask you to do. Please consider signal boosting, whether that's just tweeting a link to an episode that you happen to like, or maybe running a review of it, or posting a review on Apple Podcasts, which is hopefully a functional app now, as opposed to the blazing bonfire of binary nonsense that it was a year ago. Or Google, and that will help our discoverability, which will help more people find us, which will help us get more attention, which will help more people donate, and round and round and round we go. Alternatively, if you have a podcast and you'd like one of us to guest, get in touch. We'd love to do something like that, or interview us on a blog, or anything at all like that. So there are lots of opportunities, like I say, for you to help out without having to do so financially. And if you can do so financially, please do. Either's great. And thank you from all of us to all of you who already do. That's our show, folks. We'll be back next week when, as now, we will be a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives, pretty certain it's 4.0 at this point license. Our story next week is 4 of 7 by Samantha Mills and read by Eba Armangas. And I will leave you this week with this quote from Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez. All your dreams can come true. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. Thank you, folks, and remember, have fun.